If I had to pick just 10 exercises to effectively build my hamstrings, exercises that build functional strength, balance and stability, some athleticism, while also focusing on building muscle mass and size, these are the 10 exercises that I'm picking. What's up guys, Jay here from jtmfit.com. Today I'm walking you through my current top 10 exercises to build the hamstrings. So I take a more well-rounded functional approach when it comes to building muscle. I don't just like to sit on machines just to isolate muscle groups, just to purely focus on building muscle. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with machines. I like machines, but I like to really be able to utilize the muscle that I'm building. So I take a more functional approach, using exercises that are more functional in nature, exercises that require balance, stability, coordination, athleticism, while of course still putting a heavy emphasis on building muscle mass. So these are my current top 10. These could certainly change, but these are the 10 most effective exercises that I currently utilize in my program and all of my programs on my training app. I'll hook you guys up with 7 days free just by tapping the link in the description of this video. So before you guys finish out this video, drop in the comments, let me know which exercise you think is most effective out of these 10 exercises to build the hamstrings, and let's dive in. Exercise number 1, we have the traditional RDL, which I use as a primary muscle builder. The key with this exercise is to keep a slight bend of the knees while pushing your hips back, lowering down until you feel a good stretch in your hamstrings. Your back should stay nice and straight throughout every single rep. Pause for a second in the bottom in that fully stretched position. Then think about pulling your body back up with your hamstrings while pushing your hips forward, contracting your hamstrings and glutes briefly at the top, then lowering right back down into your next rep to keep good tension on your hamstrings. Aim for 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 12 reps. Exercise number 2, we have the Kickstand RDL, which I use as a primary muscle builder. This is a great exercise to start targeting the hamstrings unilaterally with some added instability. It's also going to be a great variation for those who have pain or discomfort in their hips or maybe their back when doing bilateral hip hinging exercises. To get set up, you want to have the secondary foot up on the toes and in line with your heel of your front/primary leg being worked. Just like our 2-leg RDL, keep slight bend of the knee while really pushing your hips back and lowering down until you feel a good stretch in your hamstrings. Pause for a second in the bottom, then pull your body back up with the hamstring while pushing your hips forward. Contract the hamstring and glute at the top briefly, then lower right back down into your next rep to keep maximum tension on the leg being worked. Aim for 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps per leg. Exercise number 3, we have the Bulgarian RDL, which I started doing more recently, and man, it is a great primary muscle builder. This variation is going to be even more challenging than the Kickstand RDL as it adds more instability and also puts even more of a load on the front/primary leg being worked. So place your back foot on an elevated surface and play around with having your foot flat or up on the toes. See what feels most comfortable. Then apply all the Kickstand RDL technique principles. Slight bend of the knee, push those hips back, lower until you feel a good stretch in the hamstring, then pull your body back up with the hamstring while pushing your hips forward. Aim for 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps per leg. Exercise number 4, we have the single leg RDL, which I use as a primary muscle builder. This is also a great functional strength builder as well. This is a great next progression for both the Kickstand and the Bulgarian RDL, but I encourage you to use all 3 variations at different times to build a really well-rounded program. So here we go, completely unilateral, which adds another level of instability while still allowing us to load up the hamstrings effectively to build muscle. All of our RDL technique principles are going to apply to the single leg RDL. I would focus on moving nice and slow through each rep to really lock in the balance aspect while still making sure you get a really good stretch in the hamstring on every rep. Aim for 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps per leg. Exercise number 5, we have the Sumo RDL, which I use as a primary muscle builder. This exercise is great for hitting the hamstrings at a slightly different angle while also bringing the adductors into the mix as well. Start with a wide stance and angle your toes out slightly. Then all of our RDL technique principles are going to apply. Slight bend of the knees, really push the hips back, and lower until you feel a good stretch in your hamstrings while keeping a straight back. I personally like using a barbell for Sumo RDLs just because they feel better for me compared to using kettlebells or dumbbells. Aim for 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 12 reps. Exercise number 6, we have the Nordic hamstring curl negative, which I use regularly as a primary muscle builder. I actually find that I get a better overall pump in my hamstrings with this exercise compared to any RDL variation. However you are able to set this up, the key is to minimize your hip flexion as much as possible while lowering as slowly as you possibly can. A lot of muscle is built in the lowering or negative portion of this movement and any other movement, so maximize your time under that heavy tension to get the best results. This is also a great exercise for someone who is trying to minimize hip hinging movements and for someone who is trying to strengthen the knees, as it puts a lot of emphasis on the mid to lower portion of the hamstrings. Aim for 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps. Exercise number 7, we have the Nordic Hip Extension, which I use as more of a secondary muscle builder, but it really has very similar benefits as the Nordic negative, and in my opinion can also be used as a primary muscle builder as well. I also like throwing this one into the mix when my back is feeling a little beat up and I don't want to do a lot of heavy hip hinging, yet still want to blast my hamstrings. Make sure that you get tension on the hamstrings and maintain that tension throughout each rep to get the most out of the movement. Once you lean forwards a bit, push your hips back just as you would with a hip hinge and lower until your head lightly touches the bench. Then, like our RDLs, pull your body back up with your hamstrings while pushing your hips forward, briefly contracting your hamstrings and glutes at the top. Aim for 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps. Exercise number 8, we have the kettlebell swing, which I use as a secondary muscle builder and endurance builder. The kettlebell swing is a more explosive, athletic exercise that focuses on a hip hinge and aggressive hip extension, which primarily targets the hamstrings, glutes, and lower back. The key with the swing is achieving the proper hip hinge to put a heavy emphasis on the hamstrings. If you have heavy enough kettlebells, you can go for lower reps and really focus on heavy strength and power, or you can go in the 6 to 15 rep range for more of a hypertrophy stimulus, or even go for more higher, more endurance focused reps from 15 up to 30 reps. I generally program swings in higher intensity scenarios, whether it be supersets with other primary muscle builders or in circuits or AMRAPs. Exercise number 9, we have the single leg stability ball hamstring curl, which I use as a secondary muscle builder, but these are actually quite challenging and for some people could be used as a primary muscle builder, in my opinion. Start by placing your heel on the ball, then do a glute bridge and maintain the bridge position throughout. I tend to bring more of an athletic approach to this exercise and really focus on slowly extending my leg out, then somewhat explosively curling or pulling my leg back in, squeezing my hamstring and glute, then lowering out into my next rep. Aim for 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps per leg. And last but not least, exercise number 10, we have the slider hamstring curl, which I use mostly as a secondary muscle builder. This is one of the best body weight, minimal equipment exercises to target the hamstrings that's out there, guaranteed. Start by placing your heels into fitness sliders, then driving up into the bridge position. Maintain the bridge position throughout every single rep. Slowly extend your legs out to almost full extension, then really drive your heels down into the sliders and pull your legs back to the bridge position, contracting those hamstrings. Please don't sleep on this exercise. This is one of the best, most effective exercises in creating muscle damage using minimal equipment and using your body weight, which can lead to some serious hamstring gains. So aim for 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps.